The late afternoon light filtered through the windows of the terminal, casting a golden sheen on the polished floors. Near gate 42A, Dr. Margaret Thompson adjusted her violin case. Moving with the calm composure of someone whose life was shaped by discipline and poise, suddenly, a sharp crack rang out. Heads snapped toward the source. A flight attendant's hand still hung in midair. Margaret steadied herself. Her breath caught, but her gaze was firm. "I told you to step aside," the attendant said sharply, her tone slicing through the tension. Margaret held her stare, unruffled. "And you were told nothing about me," she replied, her voice controlled enough to still the rolling luggage nearby. A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Phones were raised. Something grave had just happened, witnessed by dozens, but its full weight hadn't yet settled. The terminal had barely regained its rhythm before everything shifted again. Gate 42A buzzed with murmurs as Dr. Thompson looked down at her violin case, taking a slow, steadying breath. The sting on her cheek was nothing compared to the words that followed, words rooted in old prejudices she'd hoped were long buried. The attendant, Ashley, stood rigid, her jaw clenched, eyes flickering between the phones recording her and Margaret's unwavering calm. Margaret shifted her stance, not out of fear, but purpose. Her voice was the same one she'd used in executive boardrooms. "Is this how you speak to every passenger?" she asked.
Ow.
"Or only those you assume won't challenge you?" Ashley swallowed, her confidence faltering. "You're disrupting boarding." Margaret cut her off. "You had time to strike me," she replied, her steady tone freezing the air. "So you surely have time to explain why?" A man in a blazer stepped forward. "I saw everything," he said. "And you need to stop now." Ashley spun toward him. "Sir, stay out of what?" He interrupted, raising his phone slightly. "You hit her. You ripped her boarding pass and pretended it didn't happen." Ashley tried to recover her authority but found herself outmatched not by aggression but by clarity. Clear eyes watching, clear evidence mounting. A clear silence she couldn't fill with excuses. Pride drove her one last time. "Ma'am," she said to Margaret, "you can either comply or what?" Margaret's calm voice carried the weight of centuries. "What makes you think you have the right to speak to me like I am less?" For the first time since the slap, Ashley looked genuinely frightened. Just then, a supervisor rushed over Michael Harrison, crisp navy suit, badge gleaming. The moment he recognized Margaret, his expression shifted. "Dr. Thompson," he breathed. "You were boarding this flight?" Ashley blinked. Dr. Michael's voice sharpened. "Why wasn't I informed the chairwoman of the airline was boarding?" The atmosphere changed instantly. Conversations paused. A plastic cup hit the ground. Ashley stared ahead as comprehension dawned in slow, crushing waves. "Chairwoman," she whispered. Michael flushed. "Dr. Thompson, I deeply apologize." "That should have nev." Margaret lifted a hand, silencing him gently. "Not yet. We're not done." Ashley suddenly looked small in her uniform. "I didn't know," she murmured. "I swear I didn't know." "That's what concerns me," Margaret said. "If you'd known, you'd have behaved. But you didn't. And this is how you treat someone you think has no power." Whispers rose in the crowd. "She hit her. She hit the owner." Margaret gathered the torn pieces of her boarding pass. "You told me I didn't belong," she said. "Now you understand the irony." Ashley shook her head, tears forming. "Please, I didn't mean you meant every word," Margaret said. "Your expression betrayed you long before your hand did." Michael tried to intervene. "Dr. Thompson, we can move this privately." "No," she replied. "This conversation deserves witnesses." Ashley's legs quivered. "Please," she said, voice shaking. "I was just doing my job." "No job demands humiliation," Margaret answered. "No airline policy supports violence." She stepped close to Ashley, forcing eye contact. "You thought I couldn't defend myself? But I had no power? But you never questioned why." Ashley's voice was barely audible. "I don't understand." "You do," Margaret said. "You just don't want to admit it." Finally, Ashley's voice cracked. "Are you firing me?" "That depends," Margaret replied, "on how honest you're willing to be." Ashley blinked. "I made a mistake." "Which one?" Margaret asked. "The slap. The words, the assumptions." or believing I didn't deserve the same respect as others. Tears flowed freely now. Margaret didn't gloat. "Tell me," she said softly. "If someone like me hands you a first-class ticket, what do you see?" Ashley only managed to whisper, "Not someone like you. I mean, someone I didn't think belonged." "Exactly," Margaret said. She turned to Michael. This airline was built on dignity. Today, that dignity was fractured. And fractures spread, if not repaired. Ashley braced for punishment. "Bring her to my office tomorrow morning," Margaret said. Michael was stunned. You don't want her fired?" "Not yet," Margaret replied. "Some lessons require more than punishment. They require growth." "But—" Margaret walked away, violin case in hand, her dignity unbroken. Hours later, Ashley sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the shock of grace she hadn't earned, but desperately needed. For more stories that make you think, don't forget to subscribe. The next morning, Ashley entered a quiet SkyWest conference room, her hands trembling. The walls were lined with photos of the airline's history. Margaret stood at the window, looking out over the city. "You came," she said, her back still turned. "I said I would," Ashley whispered, "even if I'm terrified." Margaret turned to face her. "Good fear means you understand the consequences." "I want to change," Ashley said, tears welling up again. "I mean it." "You will," Margaret replied, "but not to escape punishment. You'll change, because passengers deserve better, because the world deserves better." Ashley steadied herself. "What do you need me to do? A rehabilitation program?" Margaret said. 6 months. Education, training, community service, true accountability. 6 months, Ashley echoed, struggling to keep her composure. "You struck a passenger, discriminated publicly, destroyed company property. 6 months is mercy." Ashley nodded, clinging to the hope that she could earn something new. Margaret stepped closer. "Look at me." Ashley met her eyes. "I'm not asking for perfect," Margaret said. "I'm asking for awareness." Ashley whispered, "I'll earn it." The internal investigation followed, and the results were shared company-wide. Ashley was suspended and placed into mandatory training. She was barred from customer service until she could prove she had truly transformed. Gate 42A went viral. Millions watched the story unfold. Millions understood. Months later, Ashley returned. Not as a flight attendant, but as an inclusion trainer. She now carried a humility rooted in real experience, not just performance. Margaret watched from a distance, never forgetting what happened, but acknowledging what could come from it. Not everyone received such grace. The woman who had encouraged Ashley's behavior, the one who demanded Margaret's seat, was banned from the airline for life. Her outrage was loud, but it was powerless. The public's response was applause. It felt like justice. But Margaret never built her world around punishment. She built it around prevention. Months later, at the SkyWest Equity Conference in Los Angeles, Margaret stood at a podium, her violin case beside her. She didn't speak about the slap itself, but about the systems that allow such things to happen. Ashley sat among the new trainees, learning. She was living proof that justice and compassion can coexist. And in that room, an unspoken question hung in the air. What happens next time someone crosses a line? And the answer was already forming, because the next story was already waiting. As the lights dimmed, Margaret watched people leave. The past few months had changed more than just airport policy. They had changed minds. Seeing Ashley leading trainees, Margaret felt a sense of peace. Not triumph, not vengeance, but something steadier. Proof that even in our darkest moments, transformation is possible. She picked up her violin case, the same one that had once hit the terminal floor. It was no longer a reminder of humiliation, but of redemption. Outside, distant engines warmed up for flight, and the wind carried whispers of new stories ready to rise. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end with someone rising, and others choosing to rise beside them. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, share, and support our channel. And make sure to subscribe to Real Life Stories New for more powerful journeys that deserve to be heard.